That night began like any other, but something about the air felt different, heavier, colder, and strangely quiet. The city lights blinked in the distance, and the road stretched out like a dark ribbon, long and empty. Arham didn't think much of it. All he cared about was getting home as fast as possible. He had worked overtime again, and he hated the idea of reaching home past midnight. His mother always waited for him, no matter how late it was. Tonight, he didn't want her to worry. He sat in his old silver car, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel as he backed out of the office parking lot. The roads were almost deserted, except for a few trucks and bikes passing by. The night felt peaceful in a way that made him believe everything was under control. He took a deep breath, rolled down the window, and let the cool night air rush in. It felt refreshing, like a quiet reminder that he was finally free from the stress of the day. But freedom sometimes makes people reckless. Arham knew he was too tired to think clearly. His head felt heavy, and his eyes stung with exhaustion. Still, he pressed the accelerator a little harder than usual. He told himself it was harmless. The road was empty. He wouldn't hurt anyone. He just needed to get home quickly. That was all. As he sped up, the city blurred slightly. Streetlights stretched into long lines of gold, and the sound of the engine humming beneath him felt comforting. He turned on the radio, hoping the music would keep him awake. A slow song played soft, almost sleepy, but he didn't mind. It matched the calmness of the road. Minutes passed. The car moved quietly through the dark, and Arham's mind drifted. He thought about the things he hadn't said to his mother lately, the plans he kept delaying, the dreams he pushed aside because life kept getting in the way. Work, responsibilities, deadlines, everything felt endless. He wished he could pause life for a moment and just breathe. Then, without realizing it, his foot pressed the pedal harder. The speedometer climbed. The world outside moved faster. Trees and buildings flew past like shadows. He didn't feel scared. He felt alive. The empty road made him feel like nothing could go wrong. He leaned back in his seat, letting the speed take over. But speed has a way of changing everything in a heartbeat. A sudden vibration in the car snapped him out of his thoughts. The road ahead dipped slightly, and the tires bumped over a rough patch. Arham tightened his grip on the wheel. For a moment, he considered slowing down. His instincts whispered that something about the night wasn't right. But then he shook his head and brushed the thought aside. He wasn't doing anything dangerous, not in his opinion. He kept going. A few minutes later, he approached a long curve in the road. It wasn't sharp, but at high speed, even gentle curves become threatening. He should have slowed down, but a mix of confidence and tiredness made him ignore the warning signs. And then it happened. A pair of headlights appeared ahead, bright, unexpected, and frighteningly close. A small car was coming from the opposite direction. Arham hadn't seen it earlier because the road dipped slightly before the curve. The two cars weren't in the same lane, but the speed made everything feel tighter, more dangerous. Arham panicked for a split second. His heart jumped, and a sudden wave of fear washed over him. He swerved slightly to adjust his position on the road. The car responded sharply, too sharply for the speed he was going. The back of the car wobbled. His hands trembled as he tried to steady the wheel. "Easy, easy," he whispered, his voice barely audible. But panic is like a spark, it grows quickly. His fear made him tug the wheel too hard, and the car jerked again. The headlights from the other car flashed past, but the moment they vanished behind him, he lost his sense of balance. He felt the car sliding to one side. The world tilted. The tires screeched against the asphalt, fighting to grip the road. In that moment, everything slowed down for him. Time stretched into painful seconds. He thought of his mother waiting at home, probably sitting near the window with the curtains slightly open. He thought of his younger brother, who always borrowed his jackets without asking. He thought of his friends, who often teased him for being too serious. And he thought of the small joys he kept postponing, because he always assumed there would be more time. The car spun out of control. The tires screamed. The steering wheel twisted violently in his hands. The seatbelt dug into his shoulder as the car swayed dangerously close to the edge of the road. A loud thud followed, a harsh, heart-stopping sound, and the world around him shook. The car finally came to a stop. Silence filled the air. For a moment, Aram couldn't move. His body trembled from the shock, and his chest rose and fell rapidly as he tried to catch his breath. Everything felt unreal, like he was trapped in a slow-moving dream, where his thoughts were louder than the world itself. The car was tilted slightly to the side. One of the front tires had burst, and the vehicle leaned awkwardly, as if it were exhausted too. The windshield was cracked, but not shattered. The air smelled faintly of burnt rubber and dust. Arham blinked repeatedly, trying to understand what had happened. He touched his face, his arms, his legs, checking himself. To his surprise, nothing felt broken. He felt sore, shaken, and terrified, but he was okay. He was alive. He slowly pushed the door open and stepped out. His legs wobbled, and he had to grab the door for support. The night wind felt colder now, harsher, as if it were scolding him. He looked around. The road was still empty. The car that passed earlier was long gone. Far away, the faint glow of the city lights shimmered. He stared at his damaged car and took a shaky breath. This could have been worse. Much worse. A few more seconds of reckless speed, a slightly sharper turn, a car approaching just a little closer, and the night would have ended in a tragedy that no one could undo. He swallowed hard, his throat tightening. Suddenly, he remembered his mother. The thought of her waiting, unaware of what had almost happened, made his eyes sting. He imagined her receiving a phone call in the middle of the night, one of those calls every parent fears. He imagined how her hands would shake, how her voice would tremble, how her heart would break, and all because he couldn't slow down. With a deep breath, Aram reached for his phone and called his brother. His voice shook as he spoke. I'm okay, he said, even though he was still trembling. But I had an accident. Can you come? His brother's worry was instant, but Aram reassured him again. After ending the call, he leaned against the car and closed his eyes. The silence around him felt different, now not peaceful, but powerful. It reminded him of how close he had come to losing everything. Minutes later, his brother arrived, frantic and pale. When he saw Arham standing unharmed, relief washed over his face. He hugged him tightly, muttering, "You scared us. What were you thinking?" Aram didn't have an answer, not a real one. He could only whisper, "I'm sorry." On the way home, he sat quietly in the passenger seat. Every passing streetlight felt like a reminder. Every turn, every bump in the road, every shadow made him reflect on what he had done. His hands were still trembling slightly, and he clasped them together to keep them steady. They reached home after a short drive. His mother opened the door before they even knocked. Her eyes widened when she saw him, and she pulled him into her arms without saying a word. She held him tightly, as if afraid that he might disappear if she let go. Arham felt tears rise in his eyes, but he kept them hidden. He whispered again, "I'm okay. I'm really okay." That night, long after his family went to sleep, he sat alone in his room. The accident replayed in his mind, every second, every sound, every mistake. It wasn't the crash that frightened him the most. It was how easily everything could have ended. How one choice, one moment of speed, could have destroyed so many lives. He realized something important that night. Speed doesn't just take seconds off a journey. It can take entire futures away. The next morning, he looked at his damaged car, still parked in the driveway. Instead of feeling angry or sad, he felt strangely grateful. That broken car had given him another chance. A chance to live differently. A chance to be wiser. A chance to understand the value of every slow, quiet second on the road. And he promised himself something simple, yet powerful. He would never take that chance for granted again. Moral: no destination is worth rushing toward if it risks a life. Slow down. Be patient. One moment of caution can save everything you love.